Hi, everyone. Hi, Whale fam. Welcome to another episode of Fireside Chat with Artists. I'm your host, Annissa. I hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to the stream, Douglas. How are you doing today?
I am well. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, good. Then I'm good.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. And I know that it's been a bit of, it's tough maneuvering through Discord. So I'm really glad that we managed to get that through as well. So I knew about your work when I was browsing the vault, basically, and I had to say that I'm very much impressed. I wanted to scoop up some editions before, but they were always sold out in Makerspace. So I'm really glad you managed to pick one up, finally, to add to my collection. And I was...
That's so nice to hear. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, of course.
We were talking earlier, and you paid me some compliments. I apologize if I didn't thank you. I'm a little ahead of my skis when there's more than one window open.
No worries at all. But I was speaking to you the other day and on how you actually mapped out your work and was completely fascinated by it. And I think the audience is going to have a little sneak peek on that in a bit as well. But I think everyone that has been kind of keeping track on our cafe has kind of seen, the treacherous inking they've been doing on your work as well. So I'm sure that the people listening are really going to enjoy it as well and learn a couple things on the way. So without further ado, let's get this started.
Yay!
So to get this started, perhaps could you introduce yourself a bit and how your journey started as an artist?
Sure. Well, my name is Douglas Paskevich, and I guess I just started drawing as a little kid like everyone else, and here I am. I don't remember a whole lot in between then and now. It's kind of a blur.
It was a blackout, basically.
Exactly. I don't remember what I drank when I was 5, but now I'm grown up and I'm drawing stuff.
Clearly it was artist juice or something.
Right. There's something in the chocolate milk, and I woke up and now I'm being interviewed.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. The bulk of my background is in comic books and magazine illustration and that sort of thing. So a lot of old school techniques are still hardwired into me. All that programming is still in the CPU between my ears.
Mm-hmm. And I also remember I was watching, doing some background research on this fireside chat. I kind of came across some of the comic books that you were doing in the past. And it's fascinating to see how, you were teaching people how to do these comic books and, where artists should kind of put weight in their art for people to kind of guide their eyes to where they should look. And I was also seeing how you also started doing some animations. In the sense where you were voicing them on your own. Did you voice them yourself?
Some of them I did just because I couldn't get anybody to do it right. And, and it wasn't their fault. I had some comedians and musicians. These aren't people who are shy around a microphone or don't know what they're doing. It's a matter of I don't know how to explain how to hit these marks comedically well enough, so I'll just do it. Mm-hmm. I'll just do this one.
I'll just do this.
Yeah. So it was only the ones that I couldn't explain properly, and like I said, it's not their fault. I'm not a great director. That's not what I do. I draw stuff. I don't know how to guide talent.
And I remember, I was watching these. What was it called? The 1,000 Deaths of Baron von Donut and Operation Panda.
Yes. Those turned out well, I think. Those were fun.
I think they were amazing. I love that one thing about your art is that I love that you have that dark humor incorporated in it, because not a lot of artists can kind of pinpoint that. Kind of hit it on the head and do it well, because it can either be too dark or it can either be too humorous. So you kind of, how do you do that? Or how do you kind of, or where did I even start, trying to put dark comedy into your work?
Well, I think for the first part of that question, I think you just go with what your voice is. I just go what I find interesting, what I find funny. So when I'm doing something dark, I'm not trying to be dark. I'm not trying to shock anybody. I'm not trying to be edgy. I'm just doing what I think is funny. It just so happens that that's really dark. So I think that's a big difference. And you see somebody who's too over the top, or they're pushing it too hard, or it's too cutesy. They're not really doing their thing. They're trying to do something else. Just do your thing, man. Just do what you find funny, or paint what you think you want to see. You just have your voice, and things will take care of themselves. And if you stray from that, and you're trying, to do something, be something specific, that's when it's not as genuine. It doesn't connect as well, I think.
Do you think your friends can so would you say that, people can kind of see you through your art, because that's basically kind of like an extension of who you are? Because humor, I feel like it's kind of, like a big part of who people are, and it says a lot about how they were growing up and their environment and things like that.
I think you're right, although I wish you weren't.
That's a great answer. I love it.
I really hate when your works reveals more about you than you wish it did, or than you mean to. You put something out, and then somebody knows exactly who you are, and you're like, wait a minute, that wasn't the objective here.
Does that happen a lot?
No. What's that?
Does that happen a lot, do you think? Sometimes, when you see a piece of art, actually, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Or what, like, from any artist for that matter, as an artist?
Me specifically?
Yes.
Well, when I'm looking at it, this is what I do. So all the joy is almost lost on me, because I'm looking at the composition. I'm looking at the technique. I'm going, wow, that color palette was really great. Oh, I really like what he did here with catching the eye and moving it around. It's almost all the childlike gut reaction and emotion. It almost, I don't even catch it, which is kind of a shame, but I appreciate it for other things.
Which is fascinating, because with your work, I feel like, with people who, well, for me at least, because I'm not an avid, drawer, I don't create art on the daily basis or things like that. And so when I see a piece, I don't really look at the composition. I kind of just trying to dig deep, why did the artist do this? What is the meaning behind this? So it's very interesting. Even looking at the logo that you have right now, or even your profile photo on Discord, it's this minion-like creature with an umbilical cord just wrapped around itself. What I actually really want to know, what is that character's name, and how did you come up with that? Because it's a beautiful fetus. That's why I call it.
That's exactly what that is. Eisenhower.
Wow.
One of the characters in Arsenic Lullaby is Voodoo Joe. He's a witch doctor who got cursed, so he has to live in the suburbs and help people get revenge on each other there.
Mm-hmm.
So he, like any good voodoo witch doctor, he's got himself a bunch of zombies, but he realized he's just got a small ranch house and he doesn't have room for adult-sized zombies. So he just made a bunch of zombie fetuses.
Oh my God.
That's the best he could do. It's the best he had room for.
So what is the Arsenic Lullaby army, basically? What are the characters? Could you give like a brief description of each character and kind of how you manifested these characters out of thin air? Because they all have such an interesting backstory. Whenever I look back on your pieces, it connects. It's like a comic book, but in different pieces. So I would love to hear about how you actually came up with those.
Most of them, like the ongoing characters, they just start off as a scribble or a sketch or something like that, and then something in the sketch connects with me, or my subconscious already had the whole backstory and snuck it onto the paper while I was drawing something else. I don't really know, but it just starts off as a sketch, and I go, that's cool. what can I do with that? And I like on that. So let's figure out how to do 10 pages.
Wow.
Let's figure out a whole story. But I remember a long time ago hearing an interview with a comedian he was a stand-up comedian, and I'm upset with myself. I can't remember his name. He was fairly obscure anyhow, but he instead of doing regular stand-up, he would have different characters that he would swing into. He instead of just doing a routine, he would do one character who was a jock and another character who was whatever. And he said, I've got maybe 50 characters, but I've got 5 or 6 that I know so well. I know what they eat for breakfast. Mm-hmm. And I didn't plan that out. I just kind of knew. So that is a lot of, it's kind of the same with my characters. I didn't really plot out, okay, this is what Voodoo Joe does. This is his personality type, blah, 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 blah. I just kind of drew it out, and I kind of just knew this guy. Right? I know this guy. I know how this guy would act. I know how he would respond to X, Y, and Z. It's just like a personality that exists in my head somehow.
That's very interesting, because I know that with some artists, they kind of start, it's very structured, where they kind of start with the personality, the characteristics of this character, and they kind of map the story with how that goes. But with you, it's kind of, it's already in your subconscious, where it's kind of like a friend to you, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, that's exactly it. Because I don't, as far as being a writer, like I consider myself a comedian/writer, but I don't write stories really like with an arc, like a beginning, middle, and end, like a three act story arc. If it does happen, it's on accident. It's really just, I plug this character in a situation. I know how they would act. I let things take care of themselves. Once that's figured out, I draw it.
Wow.
So it's really, the stories are really just more, you're just watching this guy for 6 hours. or however long the story goes on, or however long it takes for things to come to an end.
So even now, you don't really know what the next step for each character is. You just kind of just look at the piece of paper and go, okay, this is what they would do, and so I'm going to draw it.
Yeah, more or less. I'll juxtapose some scenario in there, like, I don't know, Voodoo Joe needs an apprentice. And then, okay, I know how he acts. I get in my head the personality of the apprentice. And then I just, let my imagination just kind of go, okay, this is how it would play out. And if it happens to have a story arc, great. But if it's just a bunch of weird crap that goes on, and then there you go, that's 10 pages, the end, then that's what happens.
Wow. And how do you, going back to comedy, how do you kind of inject comedy into your work, or that sense of dark comedy, because there aren't any words? It's kind of just, and I noticed that one of your recent pieces on Makerspace, it was this Ouija board, kind of, quote, air quote, Ouija board advertisement. And so how did that kind of, how did that manifest, or how did you come up with that? Or how do you even inject dark comedy into your work without words?
I'd like to tell you there's some ingenious Pythagorean theorem that I've come up with. But it was just sort of the whole absurdity of, they made Ouija boards and sold them in toy stores for children. Like, they mass produced these things, which is theoretically a connection to the netherworld. It was just the absurdity of that in itself. Really, all I had to do was put the spotlight on that. I guess, okay, we got a demon. We'll stick the demon in there with the kids. Everybody's happy because this is how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to take this home, give it to your 10-year-old. Him and his buddies hang around and talk to dead people, talk to demons. There you go. Have fun, kids. Merry Christmas.
And it's so funny because that's exactly what happens, and it's the irony of it as well. I wanted to talk about one of your recent pieces that you did, and it was, I think it was about Krampus. And it was about, it has this Christmas tree there, and, it was of this demon eating kids for dinner or for lunch. which I found fascinating. But please, I would love to see that. I would love to, hear about where that came from.
That was, I went, there was a comic book convention in the Netherlands that had me come out as a guest. And, Krampus is real big out there. Mm-hmm. And so that was just another instance of, hey, I should do something, I should do something cool for this, something exclusive. And I just started sketching out, different ideas, and then that one popped in my head. And I'm gonna try to find it here. Hold on a second.
I actually have it shared on my screen right now.
Oh, you do?
I do,
okay,
and it's
good.
insane. And I know, and it's just, it's do your pieces have actual cultural references? Because you said that this was from the Netherlands. Does it just depend where you travel, or how does that work?
I don't really have a game plan. As far as that goes, I wanted to do something exclusive for them, so I put together like a little exclusive comic book with all sorts of the Christmas related stories that I had. Right. I had just enough to do a little mini comic, and so I did that up, and tragically, it gets covered with logos and barcodes, and that's the tragedy of working in comics and in print. Is you put out the composition and you give it all the details in life, and then 30-40% of it gets covered up with logos and barcodes and UPS symbols and all these intricate details you wrung your hands over and inked so meticulously. Oh, look, there's a barcode there now. Oh, fantastic. That's gone. No one's ever going to see that. Well, there you go.
And I noticed that in some of your pieces, you had these Easter eggs in there as well. And so, you kind of publish these pieces without all the barcode and without all the stuff, distracting it. And I just, I saw it so much clearer, and it was amazing.
Yeah, well, that's, one of the nicest things to me about making an NFT is the difference between that and putting it in print. First of all, I don't think I've ever colored a cover for a comic book, given it to a printer, and had the colors look anything at all like what was on my computer screen. Like nothing, just nothing. I had one where it was a cover of a guy, trunk was open, and he was just covered in blood. And like he opened the trunk and something just exploded. And by the time the printer was done with it, it looked like it was orange.
Oh, so my God.
You didn't even know that was, yeah. I was like, oh my God, you ruined the whole joke. What is he covered with orange juice? What is this supposed to be? You know how long I worked on this thing? So there's that. And then with an NFT, it's 300 dpi. So you can get it, you can look at it, you can zoom in, you can see every intricate detail and every Easter egg and every, if I hit a message along the side of a beer can or something, you can zoom in and see all that. Where when I do it and it's a comic book, no one's gonna see that. What am I doing to myself? Why am I hiding this in here? And by the time it gets printed, it's gonna be too blurry. It's like why am I doing this? But on an NFT, neurotic overworking that I do, it can be taken in. So it's an enabling problem.
So what was kind of the most difficult part transitioning from, physically inking in the work and then digitally doing it? Because I was seeing how you kind of, I was looking at some of your earlier works in Wearable, and I saw that you hand did those as well with a marker, correct?
With a brush. Everything's with a brush.
Oh my gosh, which is insane. And so, how was that process kind of transitioning from the physical to digital?
Well, I still use a brush for everything. I scan it in, and it's still evolving. Really, not to sound pretentious, but I'm still getting my head around. Wait, I do this now. Oh, I can do this. I can change. I can change the tone of the lines that are in the front just a little bit. So there's just a little bit darker than the lines in the back to give it just a little bit more depth. And that's actually going to show up because it's computer screened and not a printer from 1958. Spitting ink onto pulp paper as it flies by at 50 miles an hour.
No, it's exactly that. I understand that completely. We don't want blood to be mistaken to be orange juice. But basically, you mentioned how you came into, the realm of, crypto art and NFTs. How did you actually get your start? Or how did you actually get to know this space?
Well, I was on a site called Steemit, which is Hive now.
Yes.
And just that community was just a lot of fun and real supportive. And we shared stuff. Hey, try this. Why don't you try this? Hey, have you heard about this? And so a couple people there were doing NFT art and said, hey, give this a try. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? What? NFT, what? Not non-fungible? Fungible? I can't even pronounce this. What the hell are you guys talking about? But I went on there and put some stuff up, and after a little bit, it started taking off, and I started looking around at other people's stuff and going, wow, there's some really innovative work going on here. A minute. The hell is all this? What is this? Hey, what's this guy doing? Hey, look at her. Look at what she made. What the hell? What am I doing with comic books? Tell me, drawing 9 panels on a. What am I doing? I'm gonna try this.
I've never actually seen any other comic book artists on, or I haven't seen much, many NFT artists in, comic book artists in this space yet. So it's very interesting. You're actually one of the first that I've come across. So it's kind of
not to be catty, but it's not really a genre that attracts very innovative people. We're talking about a genre that is still all in on superheroes that were created for 6-year-olds in 1958. This is not, it's not attracting the minds on the forefront of trying new things. Hey, let's draw Batman on a gargoyle again. Hey, how about it'd be fun? Another 800 pages of Spider-Man fighting Dr. Octopus. Like, are you kidding? He's been fighting this guy since 1963. Just sleep with each other and get it over with, all right? It's just got to be sexual tension at this point.
There has to be, right? I mean, it's bound to happen. Why didn't just do it now? It's about time anyway.
Yeah, there's no other explanation. Explanation. Just accept the relationship you have with each other. Just deal with it. Stop tearing up the city because you guys can't get it together.
No, I agree with you 100%. But, the thing with, comic books in general, I feel like it's because it's so, how do I even say that? It's so PG-13. But with yours, it's different because there's this reality sense of it. There's this kind of, I don't even know if that's the right word, but that's loathing sense of reality. Kind of.
That's a good term.
Does that make sense?
That's a good way of putting it. I was saying to someone else that the antagonist in my books it's almost life. Life is the antagonist. There's villains and there's regular people. But really, the bulk of the drama just comes from stuff not working, just from life inserting itself into what should be a fantastical situation.
And it's funny because I know that one of the characters, and it's the Voodoo Joe, I know he's supposed to be the antagonist, but it's ironic because it's actually life that's wearing him down, which makes life the antagonist. So
yeah, and it actually makes you, even though the villain doing horrific things, you just kind of root for him because, his car didn't start or this didn't go right. And, he's got to deal with all this regular life BS while using voodoo to have some wild, fantastical thing happen to a victim. He's trying to exist in this fantastic world where he's a powerful, magical villain. But, the van didn't start today. Okay, now I got to jumpstart the van. Okay, wait, where the hell did the fetus is? Right, get over here. Get away from the bird feeder. We got stuff to do.
Exactly. And it's, I saw this piece that you did, and it was of kind of voodoo, he was working his 9 to 5 job, and he just wanted to, enjoy his peace and quiet at a bar. And it kind of just reminded, of that harsh reality of that 9 to 5 job, that grind, and then just wanting to, enjoy life, but it's tough, having that job and things like that, and not being able to do what he really wants to do, or maybe he's just, he hasn't found his passion yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, any job sucks after 2 weeks. You know what I mean? No matter what after 2 weeks, it's just another job that you're doing for 8 hours, so you can go home and not do a job. So even if you're a villain, at some point you're like, oh, God, I got to do this again.
It's true, and nobody shows that harsh reality, and no comic says that. And even, when you watch, I think on Netflix, you watch these cartoon shows like BoJack, or even, what was that show called? There's a bunch of shows on Netflix, I think, just showing these, they're starting to incorporate that element into that life, that loathing sense of life, or that antagonist into shows right now, because that's what sells right now, because everything's been too PC and so PG that it doesn't really attract many people, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because there's no connection
exactly
to it. I mean, people don't know this guy. Like fans of Arsenic Lullaby, they like Voodoo Joe because like they know that guy. Yeah, I know that guy. That's me sometimes.
Exactly.
There's a connection there. You can have like as bizarre as just using Voodoo Joe as an example, not that I'm an egomaniac, although I am, but to use him as an example, you've got a guy who's a witch doctor, and he's walking around with a big voodoo mask on his face, and he's got all these powers and stuff. On the surface, there should be no way to relate to that. Like, voodoo is so obscure now. If you asked 100 people what they knew about it, they'd be able to write everything they knew on a stamp. It's completely obscure. What he's able to do is completely fantastical. But the connection, the base connection of him having to deal with life and loathing what's he has to deal, that's a connection where they feel like even though he's all these weird things, they know him as well as they know their buddy that they work with. Like, oh yeah, I know this guy. That connection, I think, it makes a big difference in whether you're entertained by something or not.
I agree 100%. What would you say are some of the, the artists that kind of inspired you the most to start making comics? Especially in this genre as well.
Oh, that's a tough one. It was really more stand-up comedians inspired me than anything. Just for this, for the same reason, I guess, the connection, the emotional connection, the jokes that they told and the way they were able to tell them, and the delivery and the cadence and all that, that even though it's not visual, it's still an equal connection to something visually connecting with you. So that was a big inspiration. Then as I started getting better and having some success and realizing, I better start learning how to draw properly. Better start learning how to actually, there's a lot of people reading this. I better make sure I'm not making an ass out of myself here with the actual finished product. Then I started, digging into mostly golden age illustrators of comic books, like from the 1950s. So like a Jack Cole, who drew a book called Plastic Man, and Jack Davis used to do a lot of stuff for Mad Magazine, and Basil Wolverton, he drew a lot of weird science fiction monsters and stuff like that. Winsor McKay is another one, and all these guys, they had a lot of energy to their work, but it was all still really precise. So like, even though it was cartoony, it felt like a real world, if that makes sense. Everything, like the refrigerator and the guy and the car, it all had that same equal level of precision, even though it was cartoony. So it felt like you're seeing a real world. It was, capturing your imagination.
So you kind of got into comedy first. So were you a comedian before this?
Sort of.
Ooh, I love that. I love that a lot.
So technically I was.
So you were.
But I wasn't very good. So I wouldn't profess to say on any level of merit that I was a stand-up comic, but I did stand-up comedy for a little while. But I was really young. Like I started when I was 16.
Oh my gosh!
Just talking, low-life bar owners into letting me perform in their stand-up comedy club. Just club owners who were shady enough to let a 16-year-old up, because what do I care? As long as people are buying drinks, whatever, kid, just keep them drinking.
Oh, I'd love to see a piece on that eventually as well. Just how bars would let kids in, and just keep, as long as we're making money, it's fine.
It was just the height of irresponsibility, really. Aside from the emotional trauma that I was objecting myself to, I'm going to go up here and perform in front of a bunch of grown adults who are also drunk. have no interest in listening to a 16-year-old.
Man, I mean, it's interesting though, because I feel like being like you said, right? I feel like a lot of stand-up comedians, it's interesting, because I was listening to this talk before, and it was like, in order for you to be a good comedian, you kind of need to be a little sad, if that makes sense, because you kind of see reality as what it is. You see reality at its fullest, whereas other people kind of see it in a delusion space. You're kind of delusioned about it, because you kind of need a level of delusion to be happy, right? If that makes sense. Am I being a bit too dark here?
No, I'm hoping for something to disagree with you on, but no, I can't disagree with anything you've said. That probably says a lot about both of us. I wouldn't say necessarily that you have to be sad, but you're probably right. I would say that you have to see things from a different point of view. You definitely have to be seeing things from a different angle, a different perspective.
Right.
And possibly you have to have the ability to be sadder than the average person, maybe, or be happier than the average person. You have to be able to see things from more extreme angles than the average person. And I think that same thing goes for art and for music. I think you have to be coming at things from more extreme angles than the average person, and that inputs into your brain, and that gives you the voice, whether you're drawing or painting something or writing something or making some music. I think the pure voices, they're seeing things other people don't see because they're standing off to the side in some way or another.
Exactly. And I mean, you kind of need that, right? Because in art, you kind of want to present that different perspective. And so it kind of is needed in that sense. And that's why I admire from a lot of artists. It's because you guys are a creative bunch, and you guys are really open-minded in the sense that you can really see things in a different light that people wouldn't necessarily consider. It's like the irony of things, that people can actually make fun of.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if it's a conscious thing or if it's something we're born with it, or we realize we have it and then we develop it. I mean, that might be the most accurate way of saying it. At some point you realize, I'm looking at things a little differently than everyone else. And then you sort of, like it's another sense, you train yourself to use that sense more. And then it becomes more and more acute. Mm-hmm. And then you use that in your work. I mean, that would be my guess, but I don't, I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't know.
I agree with you completely on that as well. The artist and seeing things in different perspective. Speaking of, I also know, you have the page out right now on your beautiful web page. And I'd love to, for you to go through some of your art as well to see kind of, how did you show that different perspective in your art as well?
Okay, I'm gonna try.
No worries.
Hope nothing freezes up here. What do I got open? Are you seeing this as I scroll?
Yeah, I'm seeing this perfectly.
Is it working? Okay, this is a piece I did a while back, and this is more just one of those things where you start with a scribble and go, hey, this is pretty cool. Let's try to do this. And then after you refine it, about 5 hours in, you realize, oh man, look at all the details I'm gonna have to ink on this son of a, what did I do to myself? Now I gotta ink all this. I'm just the writer, man. Can't someone else draw this? Look at this mess. Look at all this crap. But so this is one we were talking about earlier, where there's a lot visually going on here, right? I mean, you've got auto parts scattered everywhere, and this is an example of I'm off track of what your actual question was, so I'm sorry, but as long as it's up, I'm gonna run through this real quick.
So it's kind of just, how did you find a different perspective in this work, or what is the story behind this even?
Well, this was just a quick one-page story, and you see this kid, and he's watching Evel Knievel on TV. It was this daredevil from like the early 70s, and he watches Evel Knievel. He jumps, he's doing this stunt where he jumps over a bunch of buses theoretically, and then lands on a motorcycle. Jumps, over. He used to do this. He used to jump over canyons or jump over flaming cars or whatever. So the kid's watching this, and Evel Knievel doesn't make it. He hits the bus and explodes. Right?
Oh no! Oh no!
And the kid's like, he's imagining in his head, doing the same jump, and people cheering him on and carrying him on his shoulders triumphantly. And he runs into his room and makes himself an outfit, and he paints up his big wheel, gets himself all looking like Evel Knievel. And then you see him going up this ramp that he made out of a bunch of creaky boards. You see him come down the hill, and he jumps, and then you see him coming right at a bus. And see he's got a bunch of dynamite on the back of his big wheel, and he screams, "This one's for jihad!" So the gag is that he wanted to be a terrorist.
Oh my gosh!
Not Evel Knievel.
This is amazing. I love hearing the backstory of this because I can kind of see in his face on what's going on as well.
So that was the story, and then I did this big pinup just because as I was sketching them, it didn't fit in the story, but it was visually it was too good to not do for some reason. And
I love it. I love that in the end, you kind of added he forgot that he wasn't trying to be Knievel evil. He was actually trying to be a terrorist.
Yeah. You think, isn't this kid cute? No, this kid had a whole different story in mind.
Yep, he had a huge backstory.
He had a whole different agenda just going through his childhood brain.
And I know that, yes.
Oh, go ahead.
And in the process that you were making this, and we were discussing this earlier, and this is what I meant about the placement of artwork of this piece specifically, on how you kind of mapped out, because like you said, right, there's so much going on in this piece. How do you kind of direct where the viewer looks?
Right. In this one, because there's so much going on, it's easy for something to become a visual mess. So you kind of lay out the composition ahead of time if you can. Like if you look at paintings or cover art or what have you, if you look at the implied lines or the empty space or whatever, oftentimes you'll see that it's actually, there's a big triangle or a spiral or a big X, we'll do that so that the composition comes together and it's not a visual mess. But in this one, I hid Patrick from SpongeBob SquarePants in there. So you'll see the negative space is, just the star, and then the one tire here is one eye, and the other tire is the other eye, and then the implied line of his arms to his belt is a little smile. Isn't that nice? Isn't that happy?
Amazing.
It's much really happier than this horrific scene here is actually hit as Patrick from SpongeBob hidden in there.
It's hilarious. Would you ever experiment with using other characters, kind of other than Patrick, but just other cartoons in general as a mapping, I guess, so to speak?
I think I have in the past, although nothing comes to mind now. But I know I've done that before. Hey, let's hide this in there. Okay, I need to bring this composition together. Okay, I'm gonna stick this guy in here, and there we go. These buildings are his head, and this car here is his horn or his lightsaber or whatever. Nothing's popping in my head now, but yeah, I've done that a lot. So it goes back to every job sucks after 2 weeks, and you got to make it fun.
I agree. So it's fascinating because sometimes you kind of just start with that kind of shape first, or that cartoon first, and then afterwards you go in and start drawing, because that's an interesting way to start drawing, and I've never done it that way before.
Well, often, like with this one, it was just a sketched out mess. And I put that shape on there, and I moved things into that shape. But I'll do it the other way too sometimes, where I'll start with the shape and I'll draw things around it and stick things in there. It all just kind of depends on how I'm initially getting the image from my brain onto the paper. Like if I have no idea how to get that done, I'll start with the shape and then draw things around it. Or if I put it onto the paper and realize this is a mess. What I have here is a mess. I need some help here.
Got it. But yeah, no, I was completely just stunned, and I think I'm going to start doing that if I ever start drawing. I'm going to definitely use this, or
it's
any
fun.
SpongeBob. You have to switch it up. You're right, or else you're going to get right. It's just after 2 weeks you have to switch some things up.
Yeah, get Ren and Stimpy, or Rick and Morty, or
exactly
BoJack Horseman, whatever your flavor is.
Exactly. So then, what is the piece underneath that?
This is the GIF version of it, which I'm so thankful actually loaded. Look at that; it's actually working. How about that? And then below that. Here's an example of, this is the piece I'm working on for the whale community. And this is what it looks like when I'm first starting out. I have half an idea in my brain, and I'm just sort of sketching stuff out to see what's what, to just try to translate from the ether in my gray matter onto the paper. So this is just different sketches of that. And
is that kind of like a Godzilla, kind of, but in whale form?
Yeah. Well, King Kong specifically.
Oh, King Kong, right.
Yes, you have to be very careful, because a lot of these giant monster people, they're very militant about making sure that you don't confuse the monsters.
That is true.
I've learned that the hard way.
I feel like whenever I see, a big character in comics and things like that, I just automatically go, it's either King Kong, Transformer, or it's a Godzilla.
Yeah.
Or it's, magnified.
Right. Or don't ever call Frankenstein, because that's actually Frankenstein's monster. It was never called Frankenstein, and you will get a lecture from some godless nerd for 15 minutes. He's not actually called Frankenstein. It's Frankenstein's monster. Frankenstein was okay, man. Look, I'm just trying to draw a funny picture here. All right.
Did you learn it the hard way?
Yeah, I don't need a lecture on the minutia of something that doesn't really exist. Okay.
Oh my god.
So after that, then I'll pick I'll pick one and then I'll refine it a little more, and it'll look sort of like that.
Wow.
So
Look at that.
That would be like stage 2. So this would be stage 1. Okay, let's draw out this mess. What on here is working? What camera angle do I like? I kind of like that one better. That one's okay, but not as good. That one I don't like at all. So I'll take it and then I'll refine it a little bit more until we got that.
Wow, that is. How long does it typically take for you to, just the mapping or the inspiration or the angle, process?
From here to here, that usually takes the longest. That's the longest part of the process of an entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, including inking, coloring. If I turn it into a GIF, all of that, none of that takes as long as just going from here to here. Because this is where you overthink things and redraw the same thing 18 times and decide this plane should be just a 1/4 inch closer to the forehead. Let's redraw the entire thing. Well, this plane here, do I really want it to block all these windows, or do I want it lower? And is this camera angle off just a little bit? This could be 10, 20, 30 man hours.
Wow.
To go from here to here. Probably 15 of that is just neurotic madness. That if I went to a psychiatrist, I could probably up my productivity by a good 30%. Just getting rid of, dude, it's fine, dude. Just draw the bastard. But in between here and here is stuff like this, where you figure out exactly where you want the camera to be, where you want the vanishing points to be, so that everything lines up just right. Do I want the camera a little bit lower or a little bit higher? Do I want to be looking more to the left? Do I want to be looking more head on or more on this side? All those decisions. And sometimes, unfortunately, you just got to draw it out 2 or 3 times and see which one you like. And, like, for example, in this one, I definitely wanted to be looking down a good amount. I wanted to be looking to the side a fair amount so that we could see the crypto in his arm. I thought those were the most important parts of the composition. So that gave me the decisions based on where I'm putting the vanishing point angles to place the camera. Did any of that make sense?
It makes sense. It does. And it's very laboring, I can tell. And, which leads me to my next question. Have you ever thought of, going digital? Or because I rarely see any artists, again, like you, doing inking by hand, or even doing, the sketching process on paper first. Most artists that I know of, they usually move directly to digital. So have you ever thought of that? What are your thoughts on that with comics and things like that?
I have 2 thoughts on that. One, they are much wiser than I am.
Oh my God.
They decided I'm not going to be a moron and piss away 50 man hours arranging dots on a piece of plywood when I could just put this in Photoshop and take my mouse and go like so. So there's that. That's okay. Point 1.
Yes.
And on the other hand, which is also a valid point, but a little bit maybe of an affectation, is I think going back to the voice you want to project and being genuine and stuff like that, I think there's a certain amount of charm to the way some things look. And like I'm doing most of my work has a real old school feel to it. And I think in order to capture that charm, you gotta use the tools that they were using. I'm speaking of the inking and the brush. I really I've seen a lot of fantastic work on a computer, but
Right.
it's different, not better, not worse, just different. And the specific look that I like and that suits my voice, I only see that charm in brushwork, like actual using a brush on a piece of paper. There's something about the flaws that you're able to make and the depth that you're able to give it. And, you're drawing a line and it's going from 1 pixel to 3 pixels to 2 pixels, just because your hands are wiggling. And there's no program that's been able to give the just human flaw in your brush stroke the same way. It's sort of like a signature. A lot of that might be me lying to myself or an affectation, like, look how cool I'm using a brush like the greats did. But, the end result is good. So, whatever. As far as sketching it out and doing all this the way I do, we haven't really figured out, and maybe we never will, where creativity comes from, how it all works. And to me, if you're looking at a computer screen, right, your brain has been wired or programmed or gotten the habit of having information come in and information go out, right? The computer screen's open, or the tablet or what have you, you're used to intaking information from there as well as putting information into it, whether you're drawing or whatever. Right? Do you follow me so far? Am I making sense?
Yes, I'm following me.
Okay. Whereas with a blank piece of paper, your brain is only wired to put something onto it. Okay. Right. So 100, you put that blank piece of paper down, your brain is 100%, all of its CPU is just focused on putting something onto it. It's not, doesn't have any programs running in the background to take anything in. There's nothing on pause. There's no other windows that are open waiting for something. Just your whole brain, there's nothing going on except put something onto that piece of paper. So I think there's something to be said for, at least in the initial process, just working, just old school pen on a piece of paper or crayon or Sharpie or what have you, scribbling onto a napkin, whatever, just at least initially when you have that idea in your head, to just put it onto something without having any part of your brain also being paused to take something in. I don't know if any of that is lunacy. I don't know if any of it makes any sense, but that's my second thought on the whole thing.
I love this chat because it's basically, we've touched on so many topics from, psychology and to like, how people view the world and things like that. I think it's fascinating that we're also, this is also incorporated into your art basically, and how people view the world.
I sound like a lunatic.
That makes the two of us. It's okay. But no, so I agree with you completely with how, with digital art, people kind of have to focus on multiple things or more than one thing. With paper, because it's so familiar, it kind of speaks back to you, or the ideas kind of bounce back to you.
I think it's, we don't know how our brains work. So, I don't want, any programs in the background. I don't want anything running. I don't want any spinning wheels and any of the stuff that's going on between my ears.
No, I get that completely. It kind of reminds me of like the work, Spirited Away by Miyazaki. It's, he insisted on all his pieces or all his work kind of being hand-drawn, which is what made his pieces or his work so remarkable. Right? Yeah,
there's something undeniable about, you can't really put your finger on it or describe it. There's just, it feels like there's more life to it, more spirit to it. And it's just something different about it. Like I said, I see a lot of stuff done digitally where I go, wow, that is something you could not do in any other way. But it's different. it's different than something that, like you said, was done traditionally from start to finish. And I don't, maybe as things march on, it'll still just be different. I think, like I say, it's not better or worse, but you got to pick something that speaks to your voice and to the mood you're trying to convey.
And I agree with you with that as well. It's that human, it's that flaw. It's that, it's that human flaw, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for it.
Mm-hmm. And then moving on with that, the vanishing point, I see that's number 3. What is number 4 in your process? Oh, wait, no, that's a 1, 2, 3 points.
Yeah, but actually, no, but you're right. This is like the 3rd point in the process, basically.
Oh, wow.
You got that, then you have that, then you really get into it. You really tighten everything up, and then you have like the finished pencils here.
Oh my gosh.
It's all nice and tight. And because I'm working with a brush, I don't want to have anything up for interpretation. I don't want to have to think about, maybe I should be shifting this to the left or right. I just want, okay, this is where the lines are. I'm going to do my best to draw these lines with a brush now. I don't want to be thinking about everything. So my final pencils are really tight and precise. A lot of people have it more loose than this, and bless them. If they can do that, I'm not good enough to have any questions. Okay, that's the line, I ink it. I don't want to have to think about anything else. I don't want to be doing anything creative at this point. At this point, I want to just be tracing lines and giving some depth to it. So from that, here's a plane. If you really want to see some madness, all these planes have their own vanishing points.
Why is there numbers?
Because this is, if you follow these numbers, right? Okay, this is like vanishing point 1, 2, and 3, right? So each of these numbers, okay, this is vanishing point 5 off somewhere. Here's vanishing point 6 off somewhere. Vanishing point 4 is off somewhere else. Each of these planes have their own vanishing points, and that is madness. That is completely unnecessary.
I didn't know math was involved.
That is idiotic. There is absolutely no reason that these planes have to have their own vanishing points. That is dude, what are you doing? That'd be like me giving this tail a vanishing point, or making sure the coin is in proper perspective, or each tooth this is stupid.
Did you do that? You made sure the coin was in the perfect. Did they have a vanishing point? I feel like they did.
I might have done that. Might have done that. That might be that over. That might be this little circle over here that I didn't want to mention. It have its own vanishing point. But that's off the wall. That is completely unnecessary, and that didn't need to happen. But here's where I'm inking, and you can see I just want to just be able to put the brush onto the line and drag it across. That is hard enough. I don't want to be thinking about anything at this point. See, like here, I already got a smudge on the coin, but there's some more inking on the planes. There's the brush. So that is about half the size of a mechanical pencil tip.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then there's some inking of the whale. And once I start inking, I'm just kind of inking whatever lines I feel comfortable with at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I feel good about the curved lines, I'll start doing curved lines. If I'm comfortable with the straight lines, I'll do the straight lines. It kind of depends on the brush and the humidity. I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms. Is that, the brush has hair, it's sable hair. So if it's really humid, it's gonna not want to keep a straight line. And if it's really dry in the room, it's not gonna want to flex. And that's a whole rabbit hole to go down.
Mm-hmm.
But
I get that completely.
there's more inking of the buildings, and here is where I realize I really punished myself here. Why did I make this so complicated? What am I doing to myself? What have I done? I really should have dialed down the details. Up in this step here, I probably should have said, I don't think it needs to be this detailed. I think maybe if half of these buildings had windows and the rest of them were just shadows, that would have really got the point across fine. I didn't really have to do this to myself. But I mean, it looks okay, so I'll just say it was on purpose.
I mean, how do you think you kind of need to be a perfectionist to be a comic, like a comic book drawer? Because you kind of have to make sure that everything is correct. And, you know, I was about to ask this question. When you're inking, if you decide, you know, how about I add this right here? And then you look at it and go, oh no, what have I done? Then what do you do, basically?
It depends on how egregious it is. Mm-hmm. Like this here, I'm definitely going to white out this whole leg and change it.
Really?
That's definitely getting whited out. This whole top of this building here already got white out on it and changed because I didn't like how tall it looked compared to the building that he was on. So I'm shaving the whole top story off of this. But in both of these instances, it's not that much of a nightmare because there isn't a whole lot around his leg here that I have to deal with. You know, I can just white out the leg and change it, and I don't have to white out much around it. The same thing with this building. I didn't ink all of this already, so really I just have to white out this one line and redraw that, and it'll be okay. But possibly I don't really have to do either of those things. So there's a thin line between perfection and just let it go, dude. Just let it go.
But it's so hard to let it go.
Yeah, and it's a slippery slope. Like let's go up to here where you can really see all the detail. Obviously, if I screw up this line over here or this line here, there's so much going on. Nobody's going to notice that. Mm-hmm. It's just, there's so much going on visually that it's going to be unnoticed. But that's a slippery slope. Once you start going, it's all right if these don't matter, then you're starting to slack on how precise you want everything to be. You know, you're starting to give up. You know? Right. And like the difference between a regular TV and an HD TV isn't one pixel in the left-hand corner. It's a million pixels that are a little bit more crisp. Mm-hmm. So even though consciously nobody's going to see some screw up over here, it's the accumulation of all that precision that people notice. I tell myself.
I love that you added that. I tell myself.
These are things these are things you tell yourself.
This is stunning. So what would be the next step for this piece? Would that just leave, you know, adding the color to this and the shading? I bet that's just, you know, another whole part of, you know, treacherous work, you know, finding, you know, the perfect lighting, the perfect, you know, especially with the different perspectives, how that's going to be.
Yeah. The next step is once this is finally all inked, like these lines here, I'm really not looking forward to. The curved lines on his stomach, because it's about a 4 or 5 inch curved line with a brush, and then there's 10 of them or something. That's gonna be rough. But once all that's done, and then once all the planes are inked, then the next step is to scan them in and arrange the planes as best I can on top of the layer of the whale and the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And then starts the coloring. And yeah, that's
wow.
tedious. And I try to, when I'm coloring something, I'm really trying to keep the tones kind of muted, to keep it, keep it with the old school kind of Saturday morning cartoon washed out look. But also, I'm just trying to make sure that the lines stay at the forefront. That this is really visually interesting and kind of compelling. All these lines going on, this intricate line work. So I'm just trying to not murder that when I color it.
Right, I get it, because there's so much going on. If you have too much color going, like, again, if there's too much, color, then you kind of miss the intricate details as well.
Yeah, one thing fights the other. You can't chase two rabbits. If you want the line work to show through, then the tones are going to have to be softer. If you want the colors to take the forefront, then you don't want a whole lot of complicated lines everywhere, because then it just becomes visually muddy, I think.
No, I can understand that as well. So let's say for this piece specifically, how many hours do you think it would like take you to make the final piece?
By the time this one's done, I'm going to say about 30, 40 man hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and that's a lot of that is because of all this inking, all this line work, just taking forever. Just, like when I was about here, I'm like, oh my God, what day is it? What day is it? Is it still November? How old am I now? How much gray hair is in my beard?
Exactly.
Do people still laugh anymore? Is there still music being made? God.
But I love this, I love this piece a lot, just because I love that, and I'm going to say this correctly now. It's the King Kong in the whale version, in whale form, holding that whale coin. It's beautiful, I think.
Yeah, that's what's scary. I'm sorry, didn't interrupt. Go ahead.
And I love the Fiat planes flying around as well. That is just,
those were fun. The coin scares me the most.
Really?
Of anything. Here's why. It's a curved line, a circular line with a brush, right? So that in and of itself, that's not easy to do. And that's one of those things where it either works or it doesn't. You can't really build that line up, I'm going to do it, and if it doesn't work, I got to white it out and do it over again. Because if you make the line and it's too oval, there's nothing you can do about that except white it out and start over. And the other thing is, there's nothing else around it as a visual distraction. Like towards the bottom of the building here, if there's a mistake, well, there's no way for the eye to focus on that. There's just too damn much going on. I could screw up a bunch of this over here, and there's no way to notice. Your eye just can't do it, even if it was looking for a flaw. But here, there's no place to hide.
You can run, but you can't hide.
You can run, but you can't hide. There's nothing around it. If that line is screwed up, that's all there is. And it's in the center of the composition. That's right where the eye is going to look. All the planes are pointing at it. It's in the center of the page. It's just, hello, everybody. I couldn't draw a circle.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. I love that. Okay, so we have one question for the audience. Do you think there's a future for comic artists at Crypto Art to create and sell self-issues and graphic novels?
That is an interesting question, to which I would say yes and no. Here is the thing. They have tried for about the better part of a decade to make an industry out of downloading comic books.
Right.
and it hasn't gone anywhere because why would you bother? Why, if you are on the internet, you have a device that allows you to do all the things you could possibly think of on the internet, would you use that to download an antiquated form of storytelling like a comic book? You wouldn't. People don't. It's just, you wouldn't do that. Comic books themselves in physical form have a charm to them, and that is unlike anything else, and that charm has value, and that form of storytelling has value. And what a lot of people don't notice, and no fault of their own, but unfortunately a lot of comic book illustrators never bothered to learn, is there's a way that you can lead the eye around a page on a comic book by using the composition that is very unique to that method of storytelling, and can help you tell a story and create a mood and create a rhythm of timing that can't be done on a movie or in a book or anywhere else. It's specifically unique to that. And that also goes into turning the page, getting the eye to jump from one page to the next, and knowing that there's no more information until they turn a page. So, you can build up the drama and make sure those dramatic points are at a moment where they have to turn the page. There's all sorts of little things that make reading a comic book a really unique and personal kind of form of entertainment. And almost none of that translates onto a computer screen. And even if it did, that is now competing with YouTube. Good luck. Good luck. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't download a comic book. If I'm on a device and I can watch YouTube for 8 hours, I'm going to watch YouTube for 8 hours. I ain't doing that. Now, but so that's the no. But here's the yes. An NFT could be whatever you wanted. It's, what is the limit? Let's say 50 megs of data. Whatever you can produce on 50 megas of data, that's your canvas. There's so much innovation going on right now. We're at the dawn of something really, really special. So as innovators, if we, or me specifically, start to understand and grab onto these techniques and use them to create a story that is a comic book and isn't, then yes, there is a way to tell a comic book story that is in comic book form, but also not as an NFT. So you can tell a sequential story. I absolutely think that there's going to be a way to do that that's going to have huge value and be very entertaining and very visually compelling and have a great deal of value. Mm-hmm. But it's not going to be a comic book. It's going to be something else. It's not going to be a PDF that you click and scroll through. It's going to be, I'm not going to go into it more because I have my own ideas of how to do this, and why should I help someone else? But there are things coming that I'm going to figure out and other people are going to figure out. And so that is the yes of it. Did any of that make any sense?
It did make sense. And even just George Boyer said, they like the answer, and I agree. What do you think about, comic book collectors though? Because there's always, there's this market. There was of course this market for anything, right? So do you think, it's inevitable that one day they're going to maneuver to or move to the NFT space and start collecting as well? Do you think that, the comic book market is going to still be there? Even though, let's say, there's this very specific way of guiding the eye, on page. But, if it was done correctly and people start collecting, then do you think that'd be possible?
Boy, that's really anyone's guess. As much as I know about comics and publishing, we're in a brave new world here. It's anyone's guess. And I would say what's going to survive is going to be innovation. and innovators. And even as a bunch of comic book collectors come to the NFT space, for whatever reason, initially, it's the innovative NFTs and the innovative work and whatever this becomes. That's what they're going to gravitate to. That's what's going to grab them. Whatever gets them in the door is one thing, and that's all well and good. But I think once they're here, they're going to see stuff that blows them away and makes them forget why they came in the first place. That is my guess.
I see. And that's an interesting point of view as well. And then we have another question from Easy. My son is working on his very own manga. He is interested in minting it on the blockchain. Do you think it's better to mint as one NFT or break it up into chapters maybe?
That is an interesting question. It would depend on what the end goal is, I think. You said it was a son?
Yes.
Okay. If his end goal is to be a storyteller, then I would say produce it. I hate to give advice here because I'm new to this. You're asking somebody who has almost no idea what's going on. So I'm going to put that asterisk on there. I have almost no idea what's going on. And hardly anyone does. Having said that, okay, if his end goal is to be a storyteller, then he should put a story out there. And if that means putting out a page at a time in a sequence, then he should, I would say, mint a lot of them so you can get a lot of people reading that story and do it that way. If his end goal is to be an artist, then that's a different end game, and you would want to put out something that is not a sequence but an image where they can look at that image and go, wow, that is amazing visually and compelling and captures my attention. That's one way that's a full, what's the word I'm looking for here? A done and one and done. I don't know what, I'm at a loss for words, but they're able to look at one thing and go, wow, this is a great story all in one little NFT. But if you're trying to be a storyteller, then yeah, you want them to look at that and go, wow, that's cool. What happens next? What happened before it? I don't know. I don't know if that was helpful or not.
I think it makes sense.
If that wasn't helpful or I didn't answer the question, please let me know, and I'll try to do better. So honestly.
For me, I think it makes sense. I think it's just, okay, so Easy just said, I think it would be cool to release sections over time. He will also keep creating more, and it was absolutely helpful.
Okay, good. Yeah. A lot of people, when they're first starting out, they know they want to be something, right? I want to be a manga artist, or I want to be a comic book artist, or I want to be what have you. And it's kind of a pitfall. What you want to focus on is, what do you want to do? Not what do you want to be? What do you want to do? Do you want to tell stories? Do you want to make images? What do you want to do? And keep that in mind, and that'll help guide you through making decisions like this. What do I want to do? Do I have a story I want to tell? Then how do I tell that story? Well, sequence is better in this case.
So what would you call yourself, or what would your goal, or what would you be trying to tell? Which category would you kind of fall back into?
I would say what I'm trying to do with everything is capture people's imagination. If I'm drawing a comic book, I want them to feel like they're seeing something happen. If they're reading Voodoo Joe, I want them to feel like they're standing next to him. I want to capture their imagination. I want them to be in that world. I want them to be sitting next to him in the van when the thing doesn't start. I want to pull them in, pull their imaginations in. And same thing with if I'm doing an NFT that's just a single image. I want them to look at that image and feel like they're looking into a world. They're seeing Krampus eating these kids, to them, that's existing somewhere in their brain. It's not just a painting or a drawing or what have you. Their imagination is looking at something happening. That's what I'm trying to do. So
Yeah,
I guess that's the category that'd be the business I'm in, I guess, is trying to capture people's imagination.
and I think that's beautiful, because it's kind of, you're looking at it, and you as an artist is kind of thinking, I know you're thinking it too. You know, it's somewhere in there, and it's kind
of we've both been here.
Exactly.
We've both been here. What we're looking at right now, we know. Yeah, we know this. We've been here.
I know you know. It's kind of that feeling.
Yeah, we know what's going on.
Exactly. Okay. Well, again, I think unfortunately, everything does have to come to an end. Everything good has to come to an end. But I just want to thank you for coming onto the stream. It was an absolute pleasure having you, and I think that the community learned a lot about even just point of perspective, and even about just what are you trying to tell as a story, and even aspiring comic book artists out there on how they would try to onboard the blockchain if they were to try to, because I think you've done a really good job transitioning or merging those two worlds together, because they're quite different, and sticking back to this kind of novel, this kind of quote unquote, like this old kind of mastery technique, instead of using digital art or digital way of drawing.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all the support I've been getting from the whale community. It really, it's really uplifting. It really is.
I'm really glad to hear that, and I can't wait to see more of your work come out. I can't wait to see your NFT drop, and I'm going to see you around in our cafe as well.
Yes, absolutely. I'll continue to post me torturing myself.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, again, thank you everyone for tuning in. I appreciate everyone listening in, and I hope you guys learned a lot from this, because I sure have. And yeah, we'll have another artist fireside chat this week. So stay tuned, and I'll see you guys in a couple days.